everyone. It's Ryan Fowler here with my good friend Jordan Kurtz, Inner Game Group Live every Saturday at this time. Tim Costello should be joining us soon. Today we're going to have an interesting discussion. We're going to look at a clip. It's a continuation of last week, although the topic shifted somewhat. And Dr. Andy Huberman, world famous Stanford neuroscientist, one of the top 10 podcasts in the world. And there's a gentleman.
You hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Jordan.
Shoot.
You okay?
Oh God.
Can you hear us? Jordan? All right. So while Jordan's fixing that, it's going to be an interesting discussion today because we're kind of going to all the good stuff. We're going to look at these two high-level scientists, Dr. Will Schwarz and Dr. Andy Huberman. Dr. Schwarz invented about 40 years ago internal family systems, and it's really interesting to compare what they're doing to what we're doing because they're taking a slightly different approach or somewhat different approach to get to the exact same thing. So, which is fixing your subconscious. And we have some people checking in already. Skinny to Swole, welcome to this show. Yeah, and they Skinny to Swole, they have it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to cover some ground. We've covered psychedelics before. We're going to cover it from a slightly different angle today that I think you'll find instructive. And then Zoro Mina, welcome to the show. So before we dive into all that, Jordan, is your mic working?
Hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's good, man. It's good.
It was my earbud. It's always something, right?
Yeah, technology, love it and hate it, right?
I'm gonna need a session to clear my subconscious trauma from dealing with this fucking technology all the time. Anyway,
about a year ago, I'll tell our audience year and a half ago, like back in 2023, actually almost 2 years at this point. And before we came on live, I was trying to get my gear set up. I'm much better at using it now. But I didn't know my mic was on. They came into the waiting room and, here's Tim. And they hear me F-bombing the equipment. And they're like, what's wrong with this guy? But now they know. Now you know. So equipment can be pretty frustrating, but it's all good. Well, especially when you're new at it.
Especially when it was working. You change nothing. You come back the next day and suddenly it's not working again. It's like, what? I didn't do anything.
Yeah, for me it was I had some wires that were shorting out and didn't know it. So
really?
It was all good.
I didn't realize that. Yeah,
okay.
Get you.
So welcome Tim, welcome Jordan. Jordan, introduce yourself, and then Tim.
I'm Jordan Kurtz. I've been working on a bunch of different self-hypnosis tools. If I could I should put that in the chat maybe now at the beginning of the. I'll drop that in the YouTube chat here at the beginning of the show, so it's there. But basically, I've created a bunch of self-hypnosis tools with Ryan and Tim's help, and they're so far I've been using them myself, and I really like them. I've been making updates, and so if y'all watch the show and want access to those, I'll drop the link in the chat here in a minute or so.
Yeah, go for it, Jordan.
YouTube.
And we do have a free self-hypnosis course. You see it right down there, RyanFowlerSOS.com/approach, but Jordan has his own. So try each one out. And so I actually fixed about 95% of my stuff with self-hypnosis. It took me about 2 years to figure some things out. Some stuff I resolved right away. Some took 2 years. So the reason we do one-on-one sessions is a lot of times there's stuff people can't figure out on their own, but there are some things you can resolve within yourself all on your own. And so if you want to give it a shot, just in the banner right down there, or again, Jordan is going to put in the chat, or we can put it in the description later for the video, your program. Happy to do that, Jordan. So let's go ahead and dive in. Dr. Huberman, and then the inventor of internal family systems. By the way, for those guys who weren't here last week, we looked at this system of healing called internal family systems. And it really parallels a lot of what we do, except we actually put your brain in a state where it can be rewired. And that's what hypnosis does. It's put your brain in a neuroplastic state. But they have some tools to do that too. And that's where psychedelics come in. So we're going to dive in and look at all of that. They're going to start talking about using the sensations in your body to explore your subconscious. And that's actually very important. We do that too. So go ahead and cue up the clip at 1 hour and 25 seconds. And if you guys want clip, links
Tim want to introduce himself.
Yeah, go ahead, bring that up and we'll get started.
Does Tim want to introduce himself first?
Oh yeah, Tim. I'm sorry, Tim. Go ahead and.
Oh, that's okay. I was just in the green room eating the grapes. Hey, I'm Tim Costello, timcostellohypnosis.com. I really like this guy and his internal family systems and some of the directions he's going. There's probably some things he doesn't need to do because he isn't aware of what we're doing, but nothing he's doing is wrong. He's definitely on the right track. If nothing else, he's bringing more subconscious knowledge and theory and practice to the whole field. In fact, you'll notice he says in this, I'm not sure if we passed it already, if we're going to start at 1 hour, but he said he wants to bring IFS away from the psychotherapy world and more into the more common world. So he understands that cognitive behavioral therapy, that type of stuff is minimally effective. And some other things he's identified, like we have, are a lot more effective. In fact, I just did a session for my wife a week ago. Ryan did one for her almost 2.5, almost 3 years ago, and really set her on a phenomenal path. But she was still struggling with a couple of things. And we went in there, and even though Ryan cleared out some stuff, this is perfect evidence that as you peel the onion, there's other things that will bother you that are not to the head of the pack. And once you shoot the pack leader, other pack leaders are going to try to take over and resurface. She is literally, I have not seen her this happy in the last week than I have, I think, the whole time I've been married. And she's usually a pretty happy person, but there's some things that happen that affect her and really trigger her. And now they're just like gone. And she's walking around going, I can't believe I feel like this. I can't believe I feel like this. Dude. This is just crazy.
Dude, I want to check in with Carrie before too long, man.
Absolutely.
If that's all right, man.
But, she's standing here right next to me. She heard her name.
Hey, Carrie. Well, I don't know. I don't know if you want
ask anything you want, Ryan. Ain't nothing hidden here.
Yeah, maybe she could come on real quick and tell us how much better she's feeling after her session.
Was she gonna get a
tell
chair
her like what
here?
The difference is, if she doesn't mind, you know.
No, she doesn't mind. She loves feeling this way.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is perfect evidence of you don't have just one trauma generally. There's other things that happen. Roll in here, babes. There you go. Let me get over here. Let me turn the monitor here.
Gosh, I didn't even comb my hair.
Okay. That's okay.
Yeah, tell us about your second session. So after the first session, you were able to start a business. Tim told me you tried 20, 30 times to start a business and always shut it down on opening day or thereabouts. We did a session. You now have a successful business, making tons of money. You're backed up. I think you're backed up 2-3 months on back orders for your business.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So that's where we got you with your first session, which is massive, but Tim just did another one for you. He said that you're doing great. What are the differences you noticed from before the second session and now? How are things different?
There'd be certain things that would just set me off, or I'd read something, or I'd watch a YouTube video and it would just like kick me off. And I get so frustrated and got to do this. You got to respond this way. And no, don't get them in your frame. I go, I can't. They're stuck. They're affecting me. And so I couldn't get it out at all. And so we sat down and he had me do the words.
Yeah, we did the descriptive word list. I held her hand through that.
Because I couldn't do it, Ryan. I couldn't. They all made sense to me. Like,
so the descriptive word list for our audience, it's a list of words that describe different types of traumatic feelings people have. There's probably over 100 words on the list.
Yes.
So you looked at the list and it just triggered the hell out of you, or what happened?
I didn't know how
to. I think to more clearly explain it.
Yeah.
When I went through it with her, I slowed down, and there were a few words out of the 20 per toxic or subconscious
category.
trauma.
There's 5 categories. Yeah.
Yeah, that triggered her. So I said, okay, so not everything's triggering her, but when she would read it, she couldn't get off the word she read, and then everything triggered her.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, so I went through it real slow with her, and we found 3 or 4 words that were significant in each category, and then we broke it down from there.
And then we wrote the dive to the 5 page, which is the 5 toxic shames, I think, that affect you. And we were writing sentences and breaking them down. And there was one sentence that even when I read it, it affected me. I got all choked up, and it hurt.
That's kind of the point.
Yeah, that's right.
Because for our audience who's listening, and by the way, these worksheets she's referencing are in the free course down there, the school.com, the RyanFowlerSOS.com/approach for guys that want more genuine, true confidence, dating, attractive women. It's for that, but it's also a really good course for anxiety. This guy here, there you go. There's descriptive word list. So if you see that school.com/RyanFowlerSOS-7231, our free course has this. And the point of this is for you to intuitively start connecting to the trauma in you, and the process of rewiring your trauma and getting it out of you permanently and forever and replacing it with really good subconscious programs. The first process is you have to become aware of what we need to fix and what's in you. And this is not cognitive. This is not you thinking stuff. This is you, your instincts, your emotions, your intuition, getting into that, because that's what determines 95% of our behavior. We don't look at something and say, okay, 3 + 3 = 6, and therefore I'm going to do this. That type of thinking influences 5% of what we do. This is hardcore science. This is just how it is. This is the other 95%. It's been scientifically established. So you were highlighting this stuff, and the whole point is for this process, for you to figure out exactly what's in you we need to fix, and for you to actually connect to it so that we can actually fix it. It actually releases neurochemicals in your brain when we do this, and it puts your brain in a neuroplastic state. There's hard science behind this, and if you go to, in fact, neuroscience figured this out in the 1990s, and normal psychologists never picked it up. Never. They never did. Normal psychologists stopped in the 1970s with their methods. They stopped They may say, oh, well, this thing happened and that thing happened. They did little tiny micro steps of progression since then. But watch my 4-part video series in the video section of my YouTube channel here, Super Neuroplasticity. It goes through the hard science. Dr. Huberman talks about this. So you did this, and
hey, Ryan, let me add something real quick.
Go for it.
So the reason this word list works is your subconscious, running at 40,000 bits per second, is constantly searching for patterns that it will recognize, that it will protect you.
Yeah.
So if you feel deep down that you're not worth anything, and you look at that third column, top word there, it says worthless. So you use that in a sentence. I feel worthless. When you say that out loud, the subconscious now recognizes that pattern deep down inside and says, oh, that doesn't feel good. And then it's going to trigger you in some type of not only mental trigger, but a physical trigger that you will feel in your body. And that's
if that's in your subconscious, it gets triggered. Yeah.
And that trauma is stored in your body. So it will create a mental and a physical trigger. And then you know that is the beginning, just the beginning of identifying that particular trauma.
Yeah. Okay, so you guys, is this what you actually wrote out for Carrie then?
No, that's Ryan.
No,
Jordan's.
Oh, that's Jordan's. Okay,
I just pulled up my example.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Jordan. So then what happened? So you're getting triggered. It was pretty intense for you already. It sounds like, Carrie.
Yeah, it was. We broke down the sentence and we broke down this and say that, then add this and add this word. And it just, there was one sentence. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but it just like, Tim said, how does it make you feel? And I go, an 8. And he goes, read the sentence. And I couldn't even get through it, right?
Yep.
8 out of 10 intense feeling in your body, just reading out what's in you.
Right.
Yeah, not in hypnosis, just fully awake and reading in cognitive world.
We've done this with several hundred people, and some people don't connect right away, but a lot of people, it's like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So then what happens?
Then we went through those and kind of took a break for a bit, and then got set up. I went into the bedroom and we set up my iPad, and then Tim went in here, his office, and we.
So I did her session over Zoom in the same household.
Why?
It works.
All right. Zoom. Yeah. Zoom video call works every bit as good as in person.
Yep.
Yeah. And there were parts that we went to, and there were people that affected me that I didn't know affected me that we talked about.
So when she's talking about, we did the Gestalt, and of course her mom and dad were through that process, but there were a group of kids from childhood, just school kids,
elementary school, that bothered me, and ballet.
And you totally forgot about it, but now it's coming back up.
Right. Right.
Okay.
So
geez, I didn't know that was down there.
No, yeah, that's exactly right. I didn't know the ballet teacher affected me that way.
No, Ryan did a phenomenal job because it launched her 90% forward. But over the last couple of years, other traumas begin to
noticing
that you didn't notice before. Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about peeling the onion.
And back when Ryan did my session, I was working at Walmart. So I had a whole different set of parameters that were affecting me. People, other managers, other associates, and things like that were affecting me. I'm retired now officially. And so I don't have that, but I come in contact with other people. And so I watch YouTube videos or reading Facebook, and it would just set me off, and I just blow up, and I'd be mad, and I'd be upset, and affecting the whole family. So, I said, I need to revamp.
Yeah. And this is actually quite typical. When you go through different phases of life, you have different life experiences, and there can be subconscious trauma in you. You don't even know it was dormant. But then when you go into different life experiences you don't normally encounter, all of a sudden this stuff that was dormant gets triggered by the new stuff. And it wasn't triggered before because you didn't have life experiences before that triggered it. Yep. So when you get into different situations, that can happen. And when the new stuff comes up, you clear that. I've experienced this. I after 9 years of self-hypnosis, and it's not constant. It's there's something in me and I fix it and then I go on with my life. And honestly, after 9 years of self-hypnosis, I hadn't really done self-hypnosis in a year, probably over a year, just because I'm feeling good. But this was back in 2021. I got in a new situation, new pressures, new stresses putting on me, and some trauma in me got triggered. And I'm like, I didn't even know this was there. And so I go inward, I heal that for myself, and then I get on a whole new level of Zen I didn't know was possible. And I think that's kind of what happened with you. You kind of feel even better than before, and you didn't even realize you could get to this better level, or how was it for you?
I didn't even know I could get to this better level.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
My ballet teacher. Yeah, she bothered me when I was a kid, but it was like buried further. You peeled 3 years ago, whenever that was. You peeled some stuff that was on top, but there was other things deeper. And like a girl in my elementary school who was in my ballet, and her mom, and just the way she acted differently when it was just me and her. and our moms together. But then when we got into the school environment, she acted different towards me, bullying. And like, why do you do that and act this way and that way? And why did the ballet teacher like pull my ankles and pull my body in certain ways and yell at me? You know, it was.
We haven't even got to the Catholic nuns yet.
Yeah. The Catholic Yeah, we got to them too. So
well, we may not get to the Huberman video today. I'm just kidding. So you've had a total of 2 sessions, right? Have you done any more than that?
No.
Okay. How profoundly has sitting down twice on 2 different days, fixing stuff in you, how profoundly has that affected your life?
Today?
After 2 sessions, how much better do you feel permanently after 2 sessions? One 3 years ago, another one last week. 2 sit downs, how much has that helped your life or changed your life in any way?
I don't yell, do I?
Yeah, she doesn't. She actually really hasn't yelled at anybody in the last week, which is crazy.
How often would you yell at them before, if you don't mind sharing?
Daily. I mean, and it was sort of like I need something to happen and somebody wasn't doing it right away. So she'd be like, raise her voice. I'm going, you ain't going to get me to move by raising your voice. After 41 and a half years, you ought to know that.
Yeah. And that's where I would get frustrated even more because I knew he wasn't going to move. And so it was like,
that's great.
Come on. And so now it's just like, I walk around, I look at him, I'm like, wow. Like, wow. I just keep going, wow, all the time because I'm just.
And what's that wow about?
The feeling.
So in the past, what would you feel in the past that made you want to yell?
Just like stress. My blood pressure was literally super high all the time. And my doctor gave me, here, go measure your blood pressure. Take this if it goes up. And my blood pressure hasn't been high since. I mean, I'm still taking the medication because I need to, but it's like nothing sets me off to make that blood pressure go higher and I can't breathe.
I just thought it was hot Irish temper.
Okay. So before you would see Tim or someone else and you want them to do something, they're not doing it. And you would just kind of get a lot of stress, frustration, pressure, and yell. And now what do you feel?
Nothing. I just talk to them. It's like not this pain feeling. And I'm sure you can relate to that because our parents were pretty similar, or at least our moms were. And it's just this pain is not there. And I did go in hypnosis to my parents, my dad, but my mom, Tim said, you were really yelling at her. Like you were getting mad. You were frustrated.
In the session,
Yep.
For our audience, and the whole reason I wanted Jordan to show the worksheets and all of that is just to give our audience some background on what we're talking about. We do something called Gestalt in hypnosis, and that's where in your mind, in hypnosis, you imagine the person in front of you who you have unresolved stuff with, and you have a conversation. You say everything you need to say. If you want to F-bomb them or whatever you want to say, real authentic, what you're really feeling. You let it out, and then you become the other person, and you respond back, and you go back and forth. So you did that, and then what happened with?
I mean, I remember, and I want to just clarify, it's not like you're in hypnosis and you don't know anything, and you can't remember anything. You really, know what you're doing. You can remember it, and I remember
it comes up because it's all in your subconscious, and your subconscious comes to the forefront in hypnosis.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And I can remember getting very emotional. Like it was hard to say some of the words. And I got it out and it just got intense and mad and frustrated. Like, why did you do this to me? Why wasn't I good enough to do this? And, I'm an adult. I can make decisions and my decisions were never good enough. What will people think? We can't do that because we can't do what will this person think? We have to dress this way to go to the store because what if we run into so-and-so? And
I remember and I never picked up on this 40 years ago, but we were probably married a year or two, had a little baby. We all went to the golf club for dinner. And I remember Carrie's mom correcting the way she was holding the fork. And I'm going, geez, you're 25, 26 years old, and somebody's telling you how to use a fork?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I never thought much about it then, but I just sort of, I just remembered, like, that was stupid. If you're going to use your fork by this age, you're probably not going to change much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't use the big fork. Don't use the little fork. You got to use the big fork.
Don't use the meat fork. Use the salad fork. You know, all this kind of crap.
So for our audience, this stuff that happened to you as a kid that was very unfair and made you feel very frustrated. Now, as an adult, something happens that's a pattern match for back then, and that deep frustration you felt as a kid that was never addressed, it gets triggered, and now you're yelling at someone.
Yeah.
Now let's
that was you before this latest session. Stuff from childhood. Your child, people are bullying you, mistreating you. You feel angry, stressed, frustrated. It was never resolved. Now, before this latest session, you're in a situation and that frustration from your childhood gets triggered, and now you're yelling at people now. But then we do the session, you go back and we literally get that out of you. It's just gone permanently. And now you're walking around and you're not triggered anymore, and you can just normally talk to people. That trauma is gone. And how big of an effect is that on your behavior and well-being?
Oh gosh, I can't even. I walked last night. I even said to Tim, "Wow."
She's standing in the living room. She's looking at me. She goes, "Wow, wow." I said, "Wow, what? This feeling."
I mean,
I said, "What feeling?" Just
and so do you just feel neutral and you're just shocked that you're not frustrated anymore? Or do you feel something good, or what do you feel now?
Good, like I can actually accomplish things I need to do.
Yeah.
Like I have a craft room that looks like a bomb went off in it, and Tim would say, "Do this, do this, do this." I'd walk in there and I just
don't know where to start.
No, not doing it today. Nope, not doing it today. And now I look at it and
that's that procrastination.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's painful stuff in you. And if you start, you're going to start to feel overwhelmed. You're starting to feel frustrated because there's so much you do, just whatever. And so your brain is like, there's a lot of pain here. Don't even start. That's procrastination. Right. And now, because the painful feelings out of you, now what happens?
Yeah, because as a child and a teenager and an adult, you know, my mom, you got to do it a certain way. Got to keep it clean. Got to do this. Got to do that. Got to.
So every little thing is a big task now. You got to do it just right, or your mom yells at you.
Yeah. So I'm afraid to attack the craft room.
That's playing itself out now. Right. 40 years later, playing itself out. We go in one session and Tim. So it's true. I don't have any superpowers. Contrary to popular belief, I just have a skill that others learn. And once the others learn the skill, then like Tim and Jordan, then they help others and they see the same massive rewiring, and they're doing it for dozens, if not hundreds of people at this point. So it's a skill that people can learn, acquire, reproduce. And you guys are doing it now on your own. Like, I thought it was, I was really touched, Tim, but it also, it's kind of funny now because you wrote me on Telegram, said you did a session and she's feeling way better. And then you said, Ryan, you're my hero. And now I'm kind of like, oh, I kind of see now. Okay, she's not yelling at you. That's why I'm your hero.
But you know, what's funny is, and I never related.
But you're happy that she's happy. That's why you're really happy.
Oh, absolutely. But Carrie grew up in drippings of wealth.
Yeah.
You know, her dad belonged to one of the best golf clubs in the world.
Yeah.
And I mean, to get in there today, the initiation fee is $200,000.
Yeah.
Just to take the application, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's like 25 grand a month dues or whatever. It's insane. But I thought that was cool because I'm just this poor kid from West Virginia.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just middle class. Dad was HVAC mechanic, really good home. I just thought, man, we never had any money. We never had all the fancy things and stuff like that. Yet I got the awesome underpinnings of a solid inner game.
Yeah.
And Gary, who grew up in the wealth. I remember one day, Ryan, you were saying, yeah, my childhood was just a terror zone. It was literally being terrorized every single day. And Carrie
that was her childhood.
And Carrie goes, yeah, that's me too. And I'm like, dang, what the hell?
Yeah.
So yeah, so we went into session, and the thing that triggered Carrie to an 8 outside of hypnosis was already about a 9.5 just reading it in hypnosis. And we even ramped it up. And as we ramped it up to 10 plus 11 or whatever, I could see her convulsing on the pillow, crying, sobbing. I mean, it was tremendously painful.
Yep.
So and the sessions we do can be very intense for us, not as intense as for the client, but we're seeing people going through this suffering. We do it because on the other side, the payoff is 1,000 to 1.
Yeah. So we did one clearing. One clearing went down to a 3. So we did another clearing, went down to about a 1 or a half. And I said, let's just get it all out. We did another clearing, and then it was just 0.
And he read the statement to me. He goes, what does it do for you? Nothing. And so
nothing.
Things that when I would watch a YouTube video or, I watch people's lives and things like that I would be and just come yelling into Tim's playing his game over here. And I'd be in there waving my arms and jumping up and down and screaming and getting frustrated. What are you going to do? And then, nothing.
So I'm going to say something. Tell me if you think I'm exaggerating or if you think this is probably true. That one session did more for you than 3 years of normal therapy would.
Yes, sir.
I was just going to bring that up.
That's guys, our audience. I hope you guys find this. It's just good stuff, but that's why we do what we do. We're not like super charismatic Hollywood actor spokespeople, and we're still learning marketing and stuff. We're getting better. I have a new ad that's pretty kick-ass. I'm going to start doing paid ads. But this is why we do what we do.
I just thought I needed a little touch up, is what I thought.
And then you went in and you're like, oh, holy shit.
That's right.
So I was
very
like,
common.
Whoa,
but then, yeah.
And now when I see these people on YouTube and someone says so-and-so's here, it would, why? And it didn't faze me. And then I watched another one last night. He had to go to bed early to take Kevin to work. And so I was watching this and it would get me so mad. Like, why are people watching this? And now I'm just like,
whatever.
So it
doesn't trigger you anymore.
So it doesn't affect me.
Good.
Like it would. Where, hey.
But I could see the difference in her eyes.
Damn. Yeah.
The next day, I'm like, wow, you look different.
Yeah, he said I look different.
And for our audience, this is not an outlier. This is kind of our normal. Now, not all of our clients have trauma at this level and this profound a shift, but a very large percentage do. It's just what we do. And we get changes like this all day, every day. Like we 85% in 2 sessions, we 85% fixed the guy's stuttering. We played his video not too long ago. That's Diego. So his lifelong stuttering, 85% cured. I just had a guy hit me up last week. He's going to do another session because, again, he knows there's more to clear. He did a session for me 4 years ago. Oh, can you guys hear me still?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, I pressed my mute button. I just had a guy. I did a session for him 4 years ago. He comes back talking to me on Zoom, just brief consult last week. And he says, Ryan, I didn't tell you this at the time, but back when we did our session, I was drinking a 1/5 of whiskey a day, which is the 750 milliliters a week. It's like 15 beers a day. It's the equivalent of that. He said, I didn't tell you that. I was a hardcore alcoholic. And he said, within 1 month of our session, one day I just looked at it and said, screw it, I'm done with this, and never drank again. And he quit his Adderall addiction too. 1 session.
Doesn't need it.
I'm not going to guarantee that for someone coming to me who's an alcoholic. I mean, I'm not going to claim but that did happen for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard.
1 session cured his alcoholism.
It's very hard to these things when they come up and write them and read them and you're talking to somebody. I'm like, what is this person? As for me, I mean, it's Tim, my husband, right?
Yeah.
And I know you very well for many years. So it was like, oh, gosh, I'm embarrassed. You're embarrassed. But that was the feeling I had, because that's what my parents made me think. You don't want to tell people how you feel. They never did. They just had an aura. They put on a facade.
Yeah.
They put on a show.
Yes.
Yeah.
That everyone would say, your mother is wonderful. And
that's what narcissists do. Put on this perfect image to the outside world, and behind closed doors, they're a terror.
Well, I would say, I would be thinking, as when I got to be an adult, welcome to hell if you come to my house and see the real life. But, it was, I didn't think I'd ever feel what I feel. And I felt great after our first session. But like I said, life changes and situations change. So you need to possibly get rid of a few little things, is what I thought. But a few little things were monstrous that were buried in there. And
this is why we do what we do. It's our honor and pleasure.
Yeah, I can't. There are people, I have to go to my therapist, and my therapist says that hypnotherapy doesn't work and you need to talk it out. And no. And,
well, and we do, if you look at the science, there's 5 things you need to do to rewire your brain. Normal hypnotists do about 4 and a quarter. We do all 5. And that's why, we're several times more effective than even your average hypnotherapist. But there are some quotes by Skinny to Swole here. I want to go through that. And then we have to get to the clip, because we haven't even started. But, amazing story. And I wanted you to share your story. So thank you very much for doing that, Carrie. I really appreciate it. I think our audience does too. It's just, it's like the 1,000th miraculous healing we've had in the last 6.5 years, but very profound. We do it all the time. And it's just one more example. If you want other examples, just look at the testimonials section, the video section. I got some of them are kind of hidden within other shows, but there's easily 20. There's like 25 where it's just testimonial only. You can find another 5 or 6 in some of the other episodes we did. So Skinny, now I remember, Skinny to Swole, I remember your handle. I just can't remember who you are, but he's saying here, did a session, cleared a lot of trauma, had a lot of and Brandon, thanks Brandon, had a lot of issues with his mom and cleared it out one session. Brandon, you probably need, not probably, you need more. Some of this you can fix on your own with self-hypnosis, but I'm not worried about YouTube suppressing us, because we're about to do paid ads. And I think if this is a Brian I'm thinking of. Yeah, so psychedelics can also be very, very good. And so I know people who've taken a ton of psychedelics and it helped them, but they still have a lot of trauma. And I do know some people who took psychedelics and had a bad trip and it messed them up for over a year. And I know people who took psychedelics and it changed their life forever and really helped them. So I think it's about 30-40% just by taking psilocybin. It'll like change your life very, very, very positively, life-changing, one psilocybin trip. There are downsides. So we're going to go into psychedelics today if we have time. We're going to have 2 scientists talking about psychedelics and the pros and cons. But psychedelics can be a very powerful tool. There are risks. Don't let the anti-psychedelics tell you they don't work, because they can be massively helpful. Don't have the pro-psychedelics tell you there's not any risk, because there are. And I know 2 people who screwed themselves up for over a year with bad psychedelic trips, like really screwed the brains up. But they can be very powerful, positive tools. So Brian, hey Ryan, yes, in the one you helped in May, he's doing better. Yeah, and I think I did 1 or 2. I think I did 2 sessions for you, Brian, and you're welcome, my man. So that's why we have our show. We're doing our humble best to show this method to people that works 30, 50, 100 times better than normal stuff. I mean, it's magnitudes better, and that's why we have a show, is to share this with you guys.
Because I've actually talked with a couple therapists, and You know, their method, if Carrie were to get angry or something like that, he's like, well, you just have to learn how to choose a different emotion.
Correct.
It's like, no, it's like that is.
You can't choose your emotions; it's automatic.
Well, you can. Well, we can
reprogram our subconscious and choose our emotions that way, but you cannot consciously choose what to feel.
Well, his point was, you know, you have to. It's like it's the locus of control, right? You're supposed to just choose how you're supposed to act differently. If you feel something but you're supposed to choose your actions accordingly. It's like, well, yeah, but wouldn't it just be a lot easier if you didn't feel those negative emotions to begin with?
Yep.
And this is why I think so many people going to therapy are so massively underserved, is because they don't realize that what I just said is even an option. They just think that they have to learn how to deal. I think, is it a skill to learn how to cope with negative emotions? Sure. But it's
a lot helpful?
Easier.
Yes, but
yeah, I mean, you can't possibly imagine all of the possible triggers you'll ever experience in your entire life.
Yeah.
But typically these deeply ingrained subconscious patterns that are within you, it's much more effective to remove them.
Yep. I agree.
And normal conventional therapy turns people into an annuity payment for the therapist.
Well, there's that.
Keep coming back, pay me money every week. Cool. Now I have 30 clients coming every week paying me, or 50 clients. Cool. Now we can just, you know, and there's some drop off because people stop going because it doesn't work, or sometimes, you know, it does help you. I went 15 years on and off, 100 sessions. But the neuroscience on how to rewire your brain, the research was done in the 80s and 90s. And if you read my 4-part series on super neuroplasticity, I show a clip where Dr. Huberman explains that it is considered a fundamental concept of neuroscience that if you follow these 5 steps, you can rewire your brain in one shot. He says that. And he also says no one's using this. He says hardly anyone are using these methods that came out in the 1990s that are now considered a fundamental aspect of how your brain works. The neuroscientists know it, but these neuroscientists, they're not practitioners who actually go and help people. The practitioners in the mainstream aren't using it. They stopped in the 1970s. They've been using the same damn technology for 55 years, and they've never gone beyond it. And then the pharmaceutical industry, these SSRIs, these antidepressants, there was never any evidence they worked. There was never any evidence. It was a hypothesis a guy made that there is a chemical imbalance in your brain. A hypothesis, no evidence. The pharmaceutical industry ran with it, developed a bunch of SSRIs, serotonin selective reuptake inhibitors, and they just went with it. And that was the basis of modern antidepressants. And the guy who came up with that hypothesis later retracted it. He said, I was wrong. And then they started doing all these studies and saying, wait a second, these antidepressants do very little, if nothing, and have a lot of side effects. And they're still prescribing them. That's how corrupt the mental health industry is. They say it's science, and then they prescribe stuff with no scientific backing whatsoever as the mainstream perspective. I mean, it's ridiculous. So, yeah. But here's the thing. This guy, Dr. Schwarz here, Internal Family Systems, if all the therapists were like him, I would have much less complaint about therapists because he's actually on the right track. And I think if you use his system combined with psychedelics, which they're getting into that, they're going to talk about that, then they can probably approach the effectiveness of what we do. But even then, just the way they talk, I kind of get the feeling they're not getting quite the progress we get. But hey, let's actually go to the clip and watch it now and try not to comment so we can get done in 15 minutes before the hour point. Do you guys have anything to add first, though?
No.
Yes, but we should watch it anyway.
Yeah, we got 2 guys in our audience. We had 3 people today for our audience watching this. Brandon, Skinny to Swole. Brian, and he's talking about a bodybuilder. Yeah, the bodybuilder used discipline to hide his trauma and then finally fixed it, and good for him. Brian, we help with sessions. Massively helpful. Did 1 or 2 sessions for him, did 1 for Brandon, and they're telling you that they're better, that it helped a lot. Carrie, change her life. 2 sessions. It's what we do. So we'll keep going. And go ahead and start with the clip.
At it all the time. Conflicts never change.
Can you hear it or not? I don't hear anything.
Do you think that people who
you hear it?
I hear it.
Have
we're good.
The reflex or the ability to kind of somaticize a bit? Like I don't think of myself as somebody who's like psychosomatic. I don't
hear a thing.
Stomach aches and headaches and stuff unless I caught a virus, you know. But I can feel where certain things are in my body pretty quickly and always have. Do you think that IFS lends itself better to people who, you know, feel things somatically versus people that are like really cognitive and in their head? Because I have that component too. I can actually feel.
Go ahead and stop just real quick.
Like I do it through.
Jordan, if you can't hear it, we can just turn on the captions so you can.
I got it. I fixed it. Keep going.
All right, keep going.
I'll put device here. Let's try this rather than. Okay, now
we're a little disjointed today, guys. But
I'll go into like a narrative.
Now I hear it. I'm good. We're good. We're good.
All right, keep going.
I start to see the structure like up here.
Yeah.
And
that happened several times when we were working together. Like I would have you stay with something, and then the narrator part would kick in.
Yeah.
And then I would try to refocus you. But you know, I lived in Boston for 10 years, so I worked with lots of cognitive people who didn't know their bodies, who had, you know, just were in that rat race to try and get tenure and so on.
Been there.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
And
tenure is nice, but one should tend to their emotional selves while they're pursuing it.
But just to answer your question, they can do it, but we first have to start with that thinking part and get it on board and get it to step out and just to stay out long enough that they can feel their bodies. So, yeah, you know, it lends itself to anybody, but with people like that, it takes a while for that thinking part to trust that it's safe to let them into their bodies.
So if we were to just step back for a moment and do sort of a top contour summary of the process, someone brings forward a memory, a recent or distant memory of some thing that made them feel not good. And you try and localize some sensation in the body, get a sense of its location.
Pause there. I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because if they find it in their body and they direct the question there and they wait for the answer to come from there, they're less likely to be in their head. So it sort of short circuits that thinking part. And so many people come to therapy and that thinking part thinks it's supposed to do the therapy. It's, you know, CBT or whatever. Even a lot of the more not experiential, but a lot of the more psychodynamic therapies, the thinking part is really trying to explain why they feel stuff.
Right.
So this is getting them out of that and getting them to actually listen inside into what they think is their body, but it's really these parts that live down there that they haven't had access to because the thinking part is running things so much.
Okay, let's go ahead and pause right there real quick. I just want to explain to the audience some stuff, and you guys can comment too, of course. And the thinking part of your brain is not where the trauma's at. The 2 + 2 = 4. Oh, this thing, you know, I'll have people come to me and they're like, well, they start talking about their child and they're like, this thing happened and that led to this and that led to this. And they're all up in their head. And I stop. I'm like, whoa, stop. You're in the wrong part of your brain. You're not where the trauma is. So he's talking here about you actually let that part go, quiet that part down, and focus where the trauma is actually at, which is in your subconscious. Our subconscious is not our cognitive brain. That cognitive is conscious. That's prefrontal cortex. When you get into your body, you listen to what your body is telling you, you feel something in your gut. You feel something in your chest. You feel sad. You feel anxious, fearful. And you can just ask that part of your body, what is this about? And you get intuitive responses. Well, intuition is your subconscious. Instinct is your subconscious. Emotions is your subconscious. He's talking here about directly dealing with those parts of you. This is part of our brain. When you feel stuff throughout your body, it's your nervous system directly connected to your brain. And there's neurons in different parts of your nervous system that process information, don't just feel stuff. So finally, people are getting on the right track where they're like, okay, don't focus on this part where the trauma is not the cognitive. Focus on the other parts of our brain and nervous system where the trauma actually is, and start communicating with and exploring that. That's what he's taught. And that's a huge part of what we do. And so finally they're on the right track of what you need to do to start healing.
He is.
Yes, yeah,
but,
he is.
You know, I mean, I've had therapists like drive me away from those type of things. He's like, well, you know, no matter how you feel, or like, he wouldn't say that directly, but sort of the direction of the conversation was like, he would be analyzing something because I was telling him how I felt and trying to work through these feelings. And he was kind of almost reluctantly like trying to provide some analysis, but he's like, yeah, you probably feel like you're a failure in this way because of how you interact with your family and this and that. But he's like, that's not as important. It's more important that you have this locus of control. It's like, no, it's like, that is the important thing that I need in order to run through a hypnosis session. So it was like, I'm kind of watching
and that's
him.
why we are 50 times more effective than they are.
But, you know,
they're wrong.
I was,
they're right. And I was in some ways, but they're wrong in other ways.
And most people don't know that that's wrong because they think, oh, this person has a medical degree. They must know. They must actually know something. And a lot of them do know some things, but it's like they're driving you away from the important things. And I think the reason they're doing that is because they don't know how to handle that pieces of information. They might know how to access it, but they don't know what to do with it once they have it. And so now it's
the rank and file guys get training and then they just follow their training.
Correct.
I think that
when I say the industry is corrupt, I'm not talking about the rank and file guys. The rank and file practitioners honestly should take the time to upgrade their skill set. And, you know, shame on them for not doing that. Shame on them for getting in a rut and staying mediocre and just doing what they're told. But they're not corrupt. They're actually trying to help.
Well,
a lot of them are actually
they're average to their peers, right? If everybody they know has the same success rate as them, then they're still in the top 80%, right? Because everybody, it's like you if you had a heart surgeon that was only successful like 50% of the time, or even 75% of the time, you'd kind of like
be like,
I'd get someone else to do my surgery.
Chance of dying, but then if the other heart surgeons only have a 10% rate of success, then you'll be like, oh, this guy's world class. But meanwhile, there's some other guy that no one pays attention to with a 99% success rate. You know, that's us.
Well, but my point was like, but the psychologists are never judged on their results. It's like, how many people did you actually make feel better? They came to you, they had an issue, you had a set time frame, they left feeling better. Like, what's the success rate on that? It's just, they're not judged on that. We don't ask those questions. And
there's an Instagram short where a bunch of psychiatrists were coming out of conference, and this guy put this short on Instagram where he asked them, did they ever get a client better? And they pretty much always said, I don't know if anyone ever gets better. No. And it's like, why are they going to you if they don't get better? And they all kind of admitted it. We don't really get
and they're okay with that. I mean, I still have clients that like when I was first learning the hypnosis stuff, I wasn't as good as I am now. Like, and those clients still kind of bother me. Like, man, I should have done this better. I should have had him go through this. But like, I'm sitting here at like a very high success rate. But to be able to, with a straight face, answer the question, I'm not sure anybody I ever helped got better. It just like, you're basically relying on the societal, like you're relying on this, like the nature of therapy being helpful. It's not like you are actually particularly helpful. You're relying on people being ignorant about the subject itself to sell your services.
Well, and what's really annoying is then these same people, they're like, well, because I have a medical degree and all of this, they're actually kind of arrogant, and they actually kind of look down on people like us who are actually 100 times more effective. And we kind of get a little disgusted by that, you know.
Well, because there's no reinforcement.
Anyways,
well, if you keep getting
a lot of them
like,
don't know any better, but they should explore and actually learn, but they just don't. They're in their bubble.
Well, especially, but there's no incentive. It's like, what are the incentives to change? Like, if we suck at what we do, we don't get clients. We won't get referrals.
Yeah, they make $250,000 a year regardless.
Right. So what's the incentive to change?
Yeah.
There's really not one. You'll always have clients. That people need you. Even if you churn through them, you'll still have plenty of, you know.
I'll bring this up. Brian knows
the depression rates, the suicide rates, all those type of things are all increasing. So just like we have no shortage of actual clients, if they can understand what we do and get to us, the psychological industry has zero shortage of clients. In fact, if you talk to them, they're not booking anybody now because their schedule is so full. It's
our broken culture just manufactures.
Yeah, there's even a couple on YouTube that have become
hundreds of millions of broken people from a broken culture.
There's even some family therapists and psychologists on YouTube that started a channel, and they have so many people that when you go to their website, I'm not taking new clients at this time.
Yeah.
Because they're just so full. Even though they don't do much for the clients, it's a lack epidemic. I mean, how many people have we contacted on YouTube and said, hey, here, we got something that might be able to help you. I'm not interested at this time. Thank you.
I mean, hell, you're probably better off using, go pay for a subscription to Grok and go use the Not a Therapist Grok AI model rather than going to talk to one of these so-called medical professionals.
Yeah.
Like, at least you'll get your money's worth. And who knows, maybe the AI will actually be better. I've actually never played around with it much. Have either of you?
Yeah.
Ooh, we should generate our own Dive to the 5 AI. That would be fun.
I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 years we have an AI doing therapy, but we'll see. Doing hypnosis.
I'm thinking about it. I've got a lot of recordings, so we can train the model pretty well. But all right,
and going. New quote by Brian. The arrogance of doctors is terrible. Many stop thinking when they got their PhD or MD or PsyD and their high-paying job. You have the agency today to find the help you need. Yep. Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Okay, so back to the show. But what he's just to recap, because we got off on all these tangents. They're talking about paying attention to the parts of your brain other than the cognitive brain, because these other parts of your brain and in your nervous system, in your body, is where the real trauma is. And that's what you need to focus on and fix and communicate with and explore. So we'll keep going from that point. Go ahead.
In the stance of curiosity, they're like, what's there? What's it trying to say?
Exactly. So,
and then you start to reveal the underlying layers of what's it protecting. Exactly. What are those things that are protective trying to say?
Yeah. It's not even you're trying to reveal. It's just that you're asking these questions. And the answers start coming.
I see. Oh, I love this because I'm a big believer in seeding the unconscious mind and then letting things surface either in sleep or in meditative states. Or has internal family systems been combined with some of the therapies that are now getting tested, still in clinical trial stage around psychedelics?
Yeah. In fact, 2 days ago, we just completed a IFS and ketamine retreat.
Oh, wow.
So we had, and we're doing it more and more. Like I said, I'm trying to bring this more out of the psychotherapy world. So we invited 32 leaders to come of various kinds and had 3 days where they would do ketamine and then do IF. The nice thing about psychedelics is it puts those manager parts to sleep somehow, a lot of the time.
Yeah, I've been open about the fact, and I always have to provide the disclaimer. I don't just say this to protect.
So that's exactly the point of hypnosis is he's talking about these managers. That's parts of our ego that defend us from feeling pain. And it actually gets us to avoid stuff that can lead to pain. That's why we procrastinate, why we have anxiety, all of this. So we shut that, psychedelics will shut that down so you can actually go to where the pain is so you can fix it. Same thing with hypnosis. So it's not a complete overlap. What psychedelics does is not a complete copy of what hypnosis does, but there's a lot of overlap. If you put it on a Venn diagram, it'd be like an 80% overlap. And so his methods combined with psychedelics are basically getting the same result of what we do with hypnosis, because you are shutting down these parts of your brain. You don't completely shut them down, but you quiet them down so that your ego won't interfere with the process. And that's what he's talking about here. But keep going, or if you guys have comments.
No, I'm good. Keep rolling.
Okay.
Good.
Protect me. I say this to protect listeners, that I do think young people should avoid psychedelics. The brain is already in a psychedelic state.
Too, yeah.
It's the amount of plasticity, and this is really tremendous. And this is coming from somebody who regrets it, but I did psychedelics recreationally as a kid.
Me too.
And I regret it. I returned to them later in a clinical setting, and derived a lot of benefit, I think, from them, namely high dose psilocybin and MDMA, but both of those are still very much illegal. You can get into a lot of trouble for taking them, and or certainly for selling them. So that's the cautionary note there. And the clinical trials are really impressive, in my opinion, spectacularly impressive, especially for MDMA and for the treatment of PTSD. But the FDA this last year did not approve MDMA as a treatment for PTSD. I think going forward in the new administration, it's likely that it will get approved, but who knows? Who knows? So anyway, that's a bunch of pseudo legalese jargon, but it's sincere. If I were
pause again real quick, I want to comment on that. So MDMA is probably the safest of all psychedelics. It has almost zero neurotoxicology, if not zero. I would venture to say it's completely safe, as long as you're not operating machinery or driving or anything like that. That's what they found. It's like it's basically one of the safest things you can do as far as psychedelics. Very, very, very safe. You're not going to have a bad trip, any of that. It's safer than ketamine. The guy from Friends died of a ketamine overdose. What's that guy's name?
Well, actually, I don't know if he actually OD'd. His name is Matthew Perry.
Matthew Perry.
But he was taking ketamine.
He was in a pool and drowned.
Fell asleep and had a reaction, and then drowned in his pool.
Yeah. But they actually, on his death certificate, ketamine overdose.
Sure. I mean, that definitely caused his drowning.
Yeah. And ketamine is addictive.
Yes.
People get addicted. And he was an addict using ketamine as an addict, and he died.
Yep.
MDMA, much safer than that. Ketamine is approved for use by the FDA. MDMA, super safe, tremendous benefits. They deny it. Why? Why do they deny such a safe and helpful drug and don't approve it, and it's still illegal? Why? Pharmaceutical industry, that's why. They want to push this stuff that's not as effective, that you need to take over and over for the rest of your life to make them a lot of money. That's why. You can keep going, or we can stop here. It's an hour in, but it's up to you guys.
We can keep going.
We could go a little longer.
Give a minute.
Maybe have them talk a little more about psychedelics, but yeah.
All right.
Person or 30-year-old person listening to a conversation about psychedelics and how they can be helpful, I would want to also know that there are instances where people take them and they don't have the appropriate guidance in and through it and out of it, and it leads to serious problems. So this is a real thing that we're talking about.
That's why these ketamine clinics where they just hand them the drugs and the medicine and just leave them on their own are scary to me. I'm proud to say that IFS has been adopted as one of the primary models for psychedelics now.
Great.
Because it's a really nice fit. Mm-hmm. And as I was saying earlier, that what I see happening often, not always, is these manager parts go offline, and that releases a lot of self. So you start to just feel those C-word qualities emerging. And that's a big invitation to all these exile parts to come and get attention. And so as people come out of the ketamine experience, I can work with them for 15 minutes and do something that would take maybe 5 sessions, because they can get access to parts that they couldn't get, or it would take a long time to convince their protectors to let us go to. And we can unburden those exiles and then bring back their protectors. And so I love it. And ketamine's the legal one, so that's why we do it. And the other nice thing, and I don't know as a scientist how much you would go with this, but ketamine, again, because it opens the door with these protectors, you can also taste what I call the big self. You taste this, what they call non-dual state, that can be quite blissful. And some people got God. And then as you come back, you have this sense of, I'm much more than this little body and this little ego, that there is something much bigger. And that's why they're using it with end of life, and why it and psilocybin has such a big impact on depression, and because it sort of lifts you out of this little box your protectors have you in, to know that there's something much more. So
interesting. I've never tried ketamine. A few years ago, I and I've talked about this publicly as well. I started developing a pretty deep relationship to spirituality and God, and mostly through the path of giving up control.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just breaking news, folks. You can't control everything, you know, and you can control certain things, but most things no. And the way you describe ketamine is very interesting, because as a dissociative anesthetic, it works in such a fundamentally different way than, say, MDMA, which is an empathogen, which makes people feel so much more. Right. I mean, I sort of half joke that the aside from the safety legality stuff, the concern I have about MDMA is that if one is not in the eye mask, if you don't have somebody guiding you through it and taking some notes, you know, if you listen to a piece of jazz or classical music or your favorite rock and roll album, or you're there with your dog or cat or plants, I mean, you can spend the entire 4 hours bonding with the plant.
Right.
You're not going to run off and get married to a plant. You're not going to try and fornicate with a plant, but one hopes. But it's a very precious but very labile situation.
Totally agree.
Because it's such a strong empathogen that whatever you direct your attention to, internal or external, is going to hypertrophy. So you just have to be really careful.
Totally agree.
You know, and given that the neurotoxicity issues seem worked out in that if it's actually MDMA and isn't other things, by the way, that the big study that showed neurotoxicity of MDMA in non-human primates turned out they were injecting methamphetamine.
What?
Yeah, that paper was retracted. It was published in Science. We'll provide a link to the paper and the retraction. The retraction was not as publicized.
Wow.
Methylene dioxymethamphetamine, MDMA, has not been shown to be neurotoxic, provided that's what people are taking.
Wow.
And not taking some combination of other things. Yeah, it's a real tragedy the way that retractions don't get nearly the kind of popular press coverage that that initial studies do, regardless of whether or not the initial study was positive or negative. In any case, I do believe there are other routes to calming down the forebrain in the context of doing this kind of work that I'd just like your thoughts on.
Sure.
When I first wake up in the morning, I'm in kind of a liminal state, but the thing that I don't want to think about comes to my brain. I can't avoid it. It's like the protectors are not available. They're still asleep.
That's right.
So that seems valuable.
Yeah.
I've tried
recently to keep my eyes closed.
Sometimes I'll get up and use the bathroom.
When you wake up in the morning, you're in a state of hypnosis. He's telling you right now, hypnosis is the other way to do this besides psychedelics. And by the way, he's had a lot of podcasts and discussions with Mike Tyson, with the co-chair of psychiatry at Stanford, who's a hypnotist, believe it or not. And they talk about this. He knows it's a gateway to neuroplasticity, which is what psychedelics are.
Yep.
Something they said about psychedelics I wanted to comment on. I just forgot what. Okay, so MDMA. He talked about, you can bond with the plant and this and that and the other, and they talk about an eye mask, basically a blindfold. I don't know why it just doesn't say blindfold, but eye mask. But what happens with MDMA is whatever you're focusing on, you're going to feel a lot better about. Because what happens is MDMA puts your brain in this neuroplastic state, so does hypnosis, and that puts you in a state where your brain can be rewired. That's what neuroplasticity is. Your brain is you're not normally in this state. You have to get into the state. You can put your brain in a state where now the hard clay becomes soft clay and you can reshape stuff. Hypnosis does it. Psychedelics do it. MDMA has this added benefit of whatever you focus on. MDMA simultaneously releases dopamine and serotonin, and whatever you focus on. So if you focus on trauma while you're under MDMA, because of the neurochemicals released in your brain, it makes you feel okay, good or okay about the trauma, so that it doesn't traumatize you anymore. And so what he's saying is, if people do MDMA, they should really be guided to focus on the stuff that's messing them up to clear that trauma. That's what it'll do. But if you instead focus on a plant while you're on MDMA, you're just going to feel good about a freaking plant. And he's like, well, you won't go off and have sex with the plant or make it your girlfriend, but you're just going to have nice feelings about a plant, and you're going to waste the opportunity. So a lot of people use psychedelics. I've had 4 or 5 dozen people who routinely use psychedelics come to me for sessions. It's like maybe 5-10% of the people I see. And maybe they're just more open to hypnosis, so I get more people like that because they're already doing psychedelics. And man, a lot of them still have a ton of trauma. Why? Well, because psychedelics, you still have to go inward and connect to your trauma and clear it. Now, they did talk about psilocybin and how that can lead you to also having certain realizations good for depression. So some people take psychedelics and just by doing it get way better. But I'll tell you right now, a lot of people need that additional guidance that he's talking about while you're on your trip to get the real healing. So that's what he's talking about there. But he also said if you actually get MDMA and it's not, in fact, methamphetamine, he was talking about that. The scientists thought they were giving MDMA to the subjects and they actually accidentally instead gave them crystal meth. Great. Yeah. But
how do you mess that one up?
Well,
try real hard.
They probably, when you buy drugs and it's not tightly controlled, the good thing about the pharmaceutical industry is if you buy a prescription medication, you're going to get that medication. You get something off the street, people buy heroin. It's laced with fentanyl. They die. I mean, you can die from heroin, but fentanyl is way more, people are just, so apparently, my guess is they got the MDMA from a not very good source. And people who buy illicit drugs, that happens all the time.
You take a risk.
The drug they bought is laced with something else, or it's actually something else. And that's just because they got it from some dork on a street corner.
Yep.
Yeah, so
look at the kids that are going across the border for something, and then it's laced with fentanyl and they die. So I wouldn't trust. I hardly trust pharmaceutical companies. I definitely wouldn't trust some guy on a corner.
Yeah.
So wouldn't you test it before you give it to your
How would you do that? How would you know to do that?
I would think because you're skeptical of the source, the first thing you would want to do was make sure that the actual substance was the thing you bought. But
how do you do that even? How do you make sure it's a real substance?
I think it's wishful.
I don't know, but I'm not a scientist. It's not my problem to fix.
Well, and that's the thing is, so here he talked here about downsides and risks with psychedelics. Here's a risk. You can have a bad trip and screw up your brain. And that can happen with ayahuasca it won't happen with MDMA. But it can happen with ayahuasca, psilocybin, some other stuff. It can connect you to too much trauma too quick. And now you're stuck in that, and then it just keeps it there. You dig up all your trauma, you don't clear it, and now it's at the surface and it's just there. And now you're screwed up for a year or two. That can happen. Again, I don't see that happening with ketamine. I don't see that happening with MDMA. Some of the other stuff it can. So you got to be wary of that. And because it's illegal, you got to be really careful with your sources. Make sure you're actually getting what you're buying.
Correct.
And even if it is what you're buying, there's still risk. You can still screw you up. So, and ketamine, you're not going to have a bad trip with ketamine, but you can get addicted to it. You can overdose on it. So, hypnosis, there's none of that. Hypnosis is about the safest thing you can do with neuroplasticity.
Yeah, the worst thing that could happen is you fall asleep.
Yeah, you don't need to rely on a pill. You don't need to rely on taking some sort of drug and worrying about it. And, it's a small minority of people who really screw themselves up, but there is that risk there. Most people won't. A small percentage will. And I know 2 people that happen to, so it can happen. So hypnosis, you don't have to worry about any of that. And now I will say that there's maybe 5% of people come to me for hypnosis and we can't help them. If we really can't help you because you have a very rigid mindset or you're totally just disconnected from your feelings, those pretty much why we can't help people. It's one of those two things. Psychedelics are drugs, and they will force you in that state, even though you won't voluntarily go into it. So for the 5% we can't help, you know, I'm not telling anyone to do psychedelics, by the way, but I'm saying, because I'm not a medical practitioner, and you're not going to pin that on me that I told you to do something illegal. But I will just observe that some people who don't respond to hypnosis, that small percentage, can respond to psychedelics. You just got to be aware of the risks, and I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just making that observation. You guys have anything to add?
No, we're good today. This is a good topic. Sorry that Carrie and I took so much at the beginning, but
it was amazing stuff, though. You know.
Yep.
And those who watch our show for a long time know that every now and then we'll just, hey, here's someone we helped, and we'll play the video. But more of the testimonials are just, you know, on the video section. It's very clearly identified as a client interview. But from time to time, we bring people on. And from time to time, we have people in the comments section saying, Tim really helped me. Ryan really helped me. And Brian did that today. Thank you, Brian. And Brandon, Skinny to Swole. I mentioned that that this works. And so thank you guys for being willing to volunteer that. The stuff we do is super powerful with no side effects. And but psychedelics do have a place. I think this IFS, internal family systems guy, with I think ketamine is less useful than other psychedelics, but it can be useful for sure. And I think they're basically going to get to the place we're at by combining psychedelics with his methods, where we just do hypnosis in our methods. But he did mention, I think he mentioned something about 5 sessions. It's like most of our clients don't need 5.
Right.
You know, we get it fixed long before then. So some do. A small percentage do need 5. I had one guy do 12, you know. And he, so it just depends on the person. Most people 2 or 3, and all your major stuff is cleared. So that's all I had. Anything to add? Any final thoughts, guys?
No, sir.
Jordan?
No, I'm good.
All right. So interesting show today. We took a lot of detours, but we got through the clip. We
arrived at the end, no matter what.
We arrived at the end, and congratulations to Carrie. It takes courage to do this, but as you guys can see, you rewire your brain. The technology's out there. If you have the courage to go inward, the upside, you can change your life. In fact, you probably will substantially, massively change your life for the better, and it can happen very quickly, just like that. So if you're thinking about it, dip your toe in the water with the free self-hypnosis. Again, not as powerful as a session with us, but you can at least try it out, and it can be very powerful. School.com/RyanFowlerSOS-7231 can be very powerful. Book a session with us. Change your life. So that's all I had for today, and you guys can do it. You know, the upside is so great. Give it a shot. Even if you don't think you have trauma, if you're procrastinating, if you have more anxiety, kind of ponder on that and say, you know, or if you get frustrated too often, if you're snapping at people, if you're not where you want to be in life, this very well may be the answer for you guys. That's all I had. You can do it. You do have more power than you know. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Jordan. And we'll see you guys next week. Have a great rest of your Saturday.